Coming up on the Self-Starters.
So when I came back to South Africa, I got myself a Zoom recorder because that's the one I used at work, and 2 XLR mics. And I used to go to people's houses just like this. I mean, you using your house, which is dope. I would do that. I also use the old storeroom at the Goliath Comedy Club in Melrose Arch. There used to be chairs everywhere. Orlando Jones, big Hollywood actor, walks in and just like you can choose whichever chair you want. And I used to record like that. And that's what I used to do. And then, so that's how I started.
Today on the podcast, I speak to Simmi Areff, comedian and host of Lesser Known Somebodies, Africa's 3rd largest podcast. In our chat, we speak about the history of podcasting in South Africa, the difficulties in monetizing, and his journey to becoming one of Africa's most well-known podcasters. Like anything that involves Simmi, this chat is a roller coaster that is entertaining, candid, and you bet a laugh a minute. You're listening to The Self-Starters, a podcast where we learn how to turn our ideas into successful action. And because you're listening, you have no excuse not to get started on your idea right this very moment. Unless you just want to finish this episode first. Speaking to you today, it feels a bit like if ANN7 got an interview with Christian Amanpour.
Oh,
I'm busy thinking, how the hell have I landed this?
Firstly, I love Amanpour. I love Amanpour. She is my news babes. I love Amanpour. Amanpour is my girl, dog. I won't lie. Amanpour is my girl.
But that's what I'm feeling, right? 8th biggest podcast in Africa.
3rd.
3rd biggest podcast in Africa.
Yeah, 2nd sometimes, depending on the charts.
Over 500,000 downloads.
Across the board for POC network, yes. I mean, but when we say those things, we have to put them in context. So
I'm just here to sing your praises.
When I started, I wasn't really counting numbers, and I didn't have a server that gave me like great analytics. So with our recent server, we've got about 500,000 downloads across the network itself. But of course, my show is kind of like a flagship show. I mean, it's the one that brings all the numbers mainly. But I would say that's the right amount for Lesser Known Somebodies specifically. Maybe about 400, 500,000 in total, which isn't a lot compared to, like, if you look at Mac G. I don't like mentioning his name because, I mean, like, all the problems that go around with him. But, like, you look at him on YouTube and, like, a decent podcast of his has, like, 250,000 downloads.
But I mean, it's still huge. I mean,
Mac
G's almost the
I'm audio first, and I don't do gossip and controversy. So
yours is literally just a conversation with someone, right?
Conversation, yeah. And also as an early adopter, I was like one of the earlier people to do it. I think your dog is trying to come in, dog.
She knows when she's in the presence of a celebrity.
That's your dog.
She's like, what? 500,000 downloads. I need to speak to this man.
Yeah, she heard the numbers. Like, let me listen.
But to your point, you were an early adopter. I mean, early. It almost feels like an understatement. I mean, it was at the time, like Gareth Cliff, and then you pretty much.
It was Gareth. These 4 South African dudes that used to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Nice.
And me. And then, of course, like the audio archiving that radio stations would use. So I call it audio archiving. That's a Simmi Areff term. Everybody that uses it from now on, it's me. Audio archiving for me is basically things that were on radio, chopped up, put online. Because you must understand, like, the first podcast that ever came out in the world was in the 90s. It became known as, what's that famous one that NPR do? My American Story or something like that, I think it's called. That's what it became. But I mean, that's inherently like the first podcast from 1996, I think was the first podcast episode. Podcast really only blew up when Apple put that app on the phone.
Yeah.
That's the reason why. But like in the South African market, I was definitely first. But I was also playing around before Lesser Known Somebodies came out. I used to do a show called Hansi's Heroes, which was myself, Robbie Collins, another comedian, and Lazolo Gola, another comedian.
Hansi's Heroes.
Yeah.
Was it just about the best bookies in the market?
No. We used to go to cricket games, and I used to take my Zoom recorder with and record like the fans and stuff. Kind of like a bad Arsenal fan TV, but just with fans inside the stadium. And I'd always release the stuff like way after. So like we'd ask like small kids, like, who's your favorite cricket player? Then they'll tell us and be like, oh, do you think that person is a better cricket player than Spider-Man? And be like, you can see guys are challenging their principles.
Almost like what you'd hear on radio stations.
Yeah. Like the smaller vox pops. Yeah.
Like
we do like 30 minutes of it. So I used to play, and I used to work in radio, so I knew how to edit audio and publish online. But if podcasting wasn't a big thing in radio then it used to place the audio onto the website because they always wanted website clicks.
And what actually brought about the idea for Lesser Known Somebodies and to move into that space?
The Champs. I used to Well, there's two parts of the story. I always retell it. There was a podcast called The Champs. It was hosted by Mo Kasher and Neil Brennan, two white comedians from America, and they used to interview black comedians specifically because they wanted to find out what made black people so funny, because they never found white comedians funny, which was kind of like their angle on it. And they would interview like Chris Rock, Hannibal, before all these guys became like massive names. I mean, Chris was already massive then. So my best friend Dean, who's also a bit of a podcast guru, and photographer. And a photographer. But he works as a senior account manager for a major bank. And we used to drive down to Cape Town during like the holidays or like wherever we went, and we'd listen to podcasts. And then I went to the Montreal Comedy Festival in 2015. And I kind of knew what a podcast was, but I didn't know like how they did it. Like, I mean, maybe they went to a radio station. I don't know what it was. And there was a live recording of Stuart Goldsmith's Comedian's Comedian, which is, if you're a comedian, you would have heard of that podcast. If you're a comedian and haven't, you're not a good enough comedian. It's as simple as that. It's a very, very good podcast. And it was a live recording of it. It had one of my favorite comedians, Patton Oswalt, on it. And I was like, oh, dope. Really, really cool. And it was live and people were laughing and Patton was answering questions. And I was like, whoa, this podcasting thing seemed like a vibe. It could definitely work with me and stand up. So when I came back to South Africa, I got myself a Zoom recorder because that's the one I used at work, and 2 XLR mics. And I used to go to people's houses just like this. I mean, you using your house, which is dope. I would do that. I also use the old storeroom at the Goliath Comedy Club in Melrose Arch. There used to be chairs everywhere. Orlando Jones, big Hollywood actor, walks in and it's like you can choose whichever chair you want. And I used to record like that. And that's what I used to do. And then, so that's how I started. And back then it was more about just posting the stuff and being consistent. As you can see, I'm hella inconsistent now. That's because I'm running.
You paid your dues also.
Well, no, I'm also running other people's podcasts and trying to make money from it, because there's no point of having a business if you're not making money.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah, so that's how I generally started, yeah.
And when you started, what was the goal? Was it to use it to refine your comedy craft?
Oh, no, one of the reasons was because I couldn't get on air at any radio station. None of my bosses, Ravi Naidu, maybe he's your connection. You know Ravi Naidu from 947?
I know Ravi Naidu, but not
well,
personally.
You can tell from my tone. Ravi never wanted to put me on air. He still doesn't, I don't think so. So I thought, you know what? If I just build up a record, like an online CV of me broadcasting, maybe somewhere, somehow, some way, someone will be like, yo, let's put this guy on. He got a great voice. He sounds good. Maybe we just need to refine him a little bit, But I was in my 20s then. I'm in my 30s now. So I don't think that dream is happening anytime soon. But yeah. But I also realized that I'm good at broadcasting. Like, may not be a radio broadcaster, but I could easily do talk radio. So I have the acumen for broadcasting.
Yeah. Back in the day, when you started podcasting, to try and get onto radio, it almost I'm sure.
I don't know. I don't think it's the other way around. I really don't think it's the other way around. I think maybe we look at like overseas and go like, oh, look at my favorite person everybody mentions, Joe Rogan. And we're like, oh, look, Spotify gave Joe Rogan so much money. It's never going to happen here, guys. Let me break it to you right now. All of our podcasts in Africa are going to suck balls for the longest possible time, unless you're getting massive numbers, and someone from somewhere that's not Africa goes, oh, we can capitalize on this and make money from it. There is zero chance of a massive South African podcast.
On a global stage?
Yeah, on a global stage.
But from a local perspective, like as you mentioned...
Yeah, I mean, from a local perspective, but I'm like, to be honest, I'm about 10 years ahead of the curve here, right?
Yeah.
So like when people come to me for podcasting things, it's like... Let's take you, for example, right? I had a Google Meet with you for maybe 2 hours. It must have been 1.5 hookah pipes, a chicken shawarma, while I still went to the bathroom twice, bro. So I'm saying that, but you had asked every question that a normal person would ask that wants to start a podcast. Now that you're in it, right? You've got a recorder, 2 microphones. You know exactly the effort it takes. It is not a cheap effort. And it's not if you don't have the acumen for it, you're not going to get far. So you must understand that knowledge took me years to make. It's easy to dispense with it. Yes. It'd be like, yo, well, get yourself a Zoom, get yourself this, get yourself that. But that took me years to get. There's no one that is going to get that knowledge unless they start doing the hard work. Radio stations probably have the best chance of catching up in the podcast market because they've got access to the thing that you need, the recording studios and the recording equipment and an audio engineer and pristine quality. So they are probably better suited, but if they don't put down the money to get listens generated, you must also understand they don't have the content thought pattern of what podcasters have. So they just go, let's just take the things what did so-and-so say today? And you put it online. Like that's their view of a podcast, and they sell it to clients as well. You must understand clients are also stupid in this thing because they don't know podcasts as well. It's very, very rare that you get people that A, understand what podcasts are, B, understand how a podcast is made, and C, how they can benefit from it. Those people are generally not advertisers or sponsors or clients. They aren't.
And how does the market change in South Africa? Because to your point, a lot of podcasts are consumed exactly in the way. It's a secondary aspect to something else. So if it's radio, the podcasting element is being consumed almost as it's the exact same sound bites off the show being clipped, being put on the website, or a lot of series that are coming out on Showmax, for example, they'll have an additional podcast.
Yeah, that's cool. But you see, that's cool.
But it's still secondary.
Yeah, but you see over there, that's cool because that's community engagement. Because people that are into like Devil's Dorp.
That's exactly what I mean.
Devil's Dorp. That's such a cool idea. I would definitely like listen to that type of podcast. Like if it was a show that I really dig, I would do it because like I dig the show enough to be invested in it, and the community is already there's a way into the community. Whereas like a radio station just be like, okay, well, we've got a podcast channel now, right, guys? Let's get Wackhead's prank, Eusebius's, he's no longer on air, but like, let's put all of these things and put them together. And now these are the podcast offerings that we have. Do people actually want that? Dog, I love 702. Don't get me wrong. The last time I listened to 702, pre-pandemic vibes, boss. I don't even listen to them now. So I'm saying that do people listen to that? Maybe they listen to something that's incredibly relevant. Like if you told them, we've got the CEO of Eskom and he's telling us why we have stage 8 and I happen to be asleep that morning. I could go listen to the podcast. We're not going to be able to have the CEO of Eskom if you want. Well, but I'm saying like that's the type of stuff you'd listen to as something that's post real time type of Magandis. So like, but for podcasting, for me, if it's not interesting, if there's no angle to it, like for me, Lesson on Somebodies is not interesting anymore. It's not. It used to be interesting because I was the only person doing an interview style chat podcast. It's no longer interesting for me. So I'm going to rework it. I don't know how.
If I look at the charts in South Africa, right, there'll be one or two South African podcasters who are ranking fairly high up on the chart. Yourself,
which charts are you talking about? Because I also want to let people know that these things are not necessarily algorithm based.
No, of course. Like if you look on Chartable, or
it's a horrible thing to look at. You see, when people look at Chartable, right, Chartable is showing things that actually based on you, the user, not all of their stats. That's why Chartable was just recently bought by Spotify because it's going to try and make it better. But I mean, like, where they'd be like, Kieran's podcast is number 1 in the Ukraine. That fucking doesn't help me.
No, of course.
Like, if I go look on Chartable now, you won't find Listen on Somebodies.
No, you're doing fairly well.
No, I doubt it, bro. Yeah. I think I must be like 69. But these things don't make sense because if you go into Apple, why I dig is because the algorithm works.
Yes.
It's a true reflection of where it is. So, for example, like I said, Mac G, I don't like using him, but it's a good example to use. He can't be promoted on Apple things. He can't. Right? But the algorithm always places him there. They can't remove him from that. Yeah. Right? Chartable, they can remove you, dog.
So when you look on these charts, Apple, Chartable, irrespective of where, the one thing that is consistent is there may be 3 or 4 South African podcasts. But
the vast majority are Western in Europe. Yeah. It's a big thing I always build.
And is that a disincentivizing sponsorship?
Of course, 100%. I bring it up. So I have a connection, right, who works on the podcast world and works for one of the big podcast platforms. And it's a thing I mention all the time. So you'll see Lesson on Somebody's up there. And you'll be like, next to Lesson on Somebody is Jay Shetty. Like, okay, I understand Jay, people who listen to Jay. But I was like, when do we start getting more and more and more and more recognition? There's tons of South African podcasters or African podcasters. There's 2 girls, Mel and Joe. I'll die for these women, right? They have a thing called Africa Podfest. I make sure every year I apply to give a lecture or give a keynote talk because I believe in the idea. These guys are collecting data about African podcasters. That's the whole continent. Because our data doesn't reflect the same data of the US and the UK. I want to call them like the Western markets. Because I can guarantee you, on the Apple pages in America, Lesser Known Somebodies is not there.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you, in the Apple pages of the UK, Lesser Known Somebodies isn't there. But come for South Africa, those podcasts are there. Now, I'm not saying that we must just be there in J because we're popular where we come from. But those people, their popularity is being plugged into our system because they're popular from that side.
Yeah.
So they probably have a bigger market. But I'm just like, I find it unfair. I also find it's a lack of representation. I don't know if it's decentivizes a person to be like, oh, well, I won't get on this page. I think if you're going to have a cool idea, just do the idea. Wherever it takes you is a cool thing. But now you're fighting, a lot of people are starting the same thing or doing the same thing. So you have to be really, really good at it to just be a little bit better.
And maybe let's talk about that. How you're really, really good at it.
I'm decent at it.
I mean, you've been going for a very long time.
I have.
And you know, when you see all these fledglings coming up, myself included, what are some of the critical things that you're seeing?
How are you going to
people need
beat
to do
me?
better? Or not even
No. How are you going to beat me? I have tons of people that'll be like, oh, I'm starting a podcast. Famous people start a podcast. How are you going to beat me? You have to beat me on, 1, the content must be better, right? 2, the affordability for you to do this thing must be cheaper than what I can do it for, or what it costs me to do my podcast. And 3, how consistent are you? So currently, you probably beat me on consistency. Because maybe my recent one is a while back, a month, 2 months ago. I released it as a season. I'm not going to do that. I'm changing that soon. How are you going to beat me? I always think like that. How is your content good enough to beat me? Are you funnier than me? Okay, if you're funnier than me, dalla. But beat me on consistency then. Because at some point, if you're going to stop, I'll leave you behind.
But do you think it really is a zero-sum game? Because if I look at how
What's a zero-sum game? I always hear this term, but I never know what it means.
It basically means there's a winner and a loser.
Yeah, there's a winner and a loser. Yeah.
Because the way I consume content, and I watch a lot of YouTube.
Yeah.
I find that...
Do you have YouTube Premium?
Yes.
Is it not the best thing in the world?
It is absolutely the
I
best
always
thing
tell
in the
people, I tell people, the greatest gift you can give someone is a YouTube Premium account.
Yeah.
You know how many, I'm so good at this. I've got different Gmail accounts, right? That I get family memberships for. So I can give to girls. You can never impress a woman more than giving her YouTube Premium. I promise you, dog. I mean, I know you're getting married now.
The only issue my fiance gave me YouTube Premium. So
yeah, she's the working one in this one. Yeah. Maybe I must wait for them to give it to me.
But when I consume content, if I enjoy, let's just say I enjoy people who, are funny, they go out and do activities, they maybe comment on the world. I don't find just one that I enjoy and say, well, you're my ride or die.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not a zero-sum game in that sense. No, you can like a ton of... Okay, so there was a study done in Harvard years and years ago, right? They gave a person 3 chocolates. They choose your favorite one. They chose one of the chocolates, right? But then now they did the same study, but they offered the person 50 different chocolates. It's tougher to choose because you like a bunch of them.
This is like Netflix, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just like, I'm not saying that I beat you in the sense that, oh, your listener is my listener. Bro, there's nobody is interested in a young Muslim stand-up comedian, a failed Muslim stand-up comedian, who's interviewing people. Like, they don't care, dog. Yeah. There's other things, like people haven't heard of Lesser Known Somebodies. There are people that have, that'll stand me, but you can like more than one thing, bro. I like Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones. And The Wire. So I'm saying, but you have to be better than me to compete with me. There's a couple of silos where you have to be better than me to compete with me. But if you release a one-off episode, Kieran and whoever, and that episode is banging, and people enjoy that episode.
But it's also the first episode. The algorithm's also just going to push it up anywhere.
Well, maybe they push it up, maybe they don't push it. You don't know. But maybe if you're only going to release one, you can't beat me on one.
No.
I
mean, everything I've seen is consistency.
You have to beat me on... we did this thing, right? Someone did a critical analysis of POC podcasts. And they said, who makes your thumbnails? So I was being clever in the meeting. So I was just like, we've got a special art department that does our thumbnails. And they're like, yo, how much does it cost you? So I'm just going, I know how much I've got a graphic designer. It was really, really good. Cool guy, Andrew. And he takes the ideas that I have and he makes it. Sometimes he brings his own stuff, which is great also, but the vast majority of the time, he understands the brand. I trust him. He makes it. Maybe it costs me like max 2,500 Rand for like a thumbnail. They valued our thumbnails between 18 to 25,000 US dollars a pop. So when the guy's like, "Who does your thumbnails?" I was like, "Oh, it's our art department. I don't really know. It's a Costa company." And then it's like, "Well, we value things." And I was like, never tell Andrew that. Remember Andrew's dropping me, he's like, "Yo, here's a 200,000 Rand thumbnail, dog." But I've got a formula of how thumbnails work. I legitimately have a formula, and I'm 10 for 10. Not one of my thumbnails have failed.
Your thumbnails are
my artwork
gorgeous.
When it comes, I understand podcasts, so that's why I'm saying if you're gonna beat me there. These are the small margins because the algorithm actually looks at thumbnails. So I'm like, you're gonna have to beat me there. So you'll be like, okay, artwork, content, consistency. You must remember, I don't have a backing of a radio station as well. I can't be like, "Hey guys, listen to this podcast." Bruce Whitfield has a great podcast. Not the Money Minute one. It was one they did with R&B called Solutionist Thinking. Oh, I loved it. It was so cool. And they did a season 2. Their numbers through the roof. That's because they got a radio station with Bruce, who's an excellent broadcaster. So when he goes, "Hey, listen to my podcast." I'm already a fan of Bruce. I go straight
to
there.
listen. Yeah,
and it's already on the radio station. It's on the radio station. That's like 300,000 people listening at once. Right? So you go. So that's some dope listens. I don't have that. I got an Instagram account that has 5,000 people, a Twitter account that has 15,000 people, and a Facebook account that has 6.
And you have stand-up comedy shows where you can
but
punch.
I mean, like, people don't come to the stand-up shows and be like, "Oh, well, I came from Simmi's podcast," but I'm going to try change that. That's my plan for the show. The one thing I failed at recently is adapting. I got all of these podcasts in my stable. Some of them are good. Some of them are okay. Some of them need to be reworked. But the most important podcast in that stable is mine.
Yes.
So if I am not doing a good job, the other guys are going to struggle. So I was like, how do I rework it? And I treat it like how I treat stand-up. I go, when I'm not enjoying stand-up, I won't do it. But I figure a way out to be like, I'm keen to do it again. I need to do the same thing with my podcast. I'm going to reinvent my podcast. I don't think I'll change the name. Maybe change the branding. Maybe change the style. So there's a lot of things I want to work on. You must understand, we also, as a podcast network, went behind a paywall. We don't have tons of subscribers behind that paywall. Like, to be honest with you, I think we have about maybe 36. That brings us 3,600 Rand a month. Less than 57% of that. So that's about 1,800 Rand, you know? It's not a lot.
And I wanted to ask you a question around that. Why go the unconventional route of going behind a paywall?
The reason why I love Apple for that. It's the easiest way for a creator to secure the bag.
So why not do something? So what I see on like YouTube from content creators is try get sponsorship.
Get a sponsor.
For look, I haven't tried. I'm too small.
Kieran, let me tell you something.
Is it hard?
Go get a sponsor, bro.
But so the market, maybe the model in the US
Go get a sponsor. It's easier. They understand the market. They understand the value of a decent podcast there. They really, really do. Because you want to show engagement.
Yeah.
You're not showing numbers only. I always tell people it's not about the numbers. I can show you I have an episode that has hit 87,000 downloads. Yeah. Are you impressed with that number?
As a South African, yes. As a global consumer,
no.
Yeah.
As a
South African, I'd be.
As a podcast, are you interested in that number? 87,000.
Yes.
Do you know what the engagement is on that?
What is it?
28%.
That's
high. It
high.
means that in an hour, people have only listened to 15 minutes.
But that's fairly high, is it not?
But doesn't advertiser doesn't understand that? Advertiser looks, what's the number? Doesn't look at the engagement. Now, when someone gives you advertising, they want to sponsor your show, they're looking for an ROI on it, right?
Yeah.
So in that segment, maybe there's like, do we sponsor the whole podcast? People will stop listening after 15. But I don't tell the client that, of course. I want their money. So I'm just like, what do you do? People don't understand. It's the engagement. If you had a podcast, I tell people like this all the time. You had a podcast that only had 1,000 listeners, but the engagement, the listener rate was 80 to 100%. Stay there. You'll make money. You'll 100%. Make money. Because those 1,000 people,
you know them intimately.
Yeah, but they'll subscribe.
Yes. Yeah.
So now Apple made it a bit easier. Okay, so you can put things behind a paywall, and a lot of the server providers that we use are helping distribute to the other paywall places. It'll get better over time because it's still relatively new. So we went down that route because it's relatively new. We want to try it out, but How do I make it work for me?
Yeah.
As Simmi, not only the podcast, as Simmi the comedian, Simmi as the artist, Simmi the creative. How do I make it work for me? So I'm going to. Every podcast I do will be behind a paywall. And if you like me, you'll give me 100 Rand a month. And that will give you benefits. You could come to my shows for free. You can get these tickets for free. Your 100 Rand must be worth it, right? Currently it's not.
Semi-premium.
Basically, if you're a fan of me, you must be a fan of me.
Yeah.
If you want the free stuff, go ahead, listen to the free stuff, and then decide if you want to be a fan of me. But it's the easiest way for me to secure a bag. I don't have to fight a sponsor. A sponsor can come and go. There's tons of podcasts that have had sponsors and no longer have sponsors, and then what do?
The thing I find amazing about you is you talk about how competitive the space is, in the sense that there are more and more people coming up.
Load shedding. Just want to let all the listeners know the lights went off now, dog. now.
At least we're prepared, right?
Yeah.
Do you want some light?
No, I'm fine.
It's a very competitive space. There's minimal amount of money available from a sponsorship perspective. Anyone who's looking into the space, and yet you are probably one of the most generous people I've come across in terms of sharing information.
Yeah, I'm a big sharer of info.
And my question is, why? If you went on...
Because I hate gatekeepers.
But it's amazing. I find it amazing. You hate gatekeepers. You're so willing to share. And at the same time, there's this deeply competitive side of where you've literally gone and said, okay, find someone and show me how they're going to beat me
on an even playing field.
I like that.
I hate gatekeepers. It was one of the reasons why I became a pariah in the comedy industry for so long, because I insulted gatekeepers. But I hate gatekeepers. So I'm like, I'm not going to keep the information away from you. I may not tell you how I run my thing.
Yeah.
I may not be saying like, yo, my decibel level and is this, and I've got the equalizer on that, and this is how I remove noise from a podcast edit. I may not be doing those things. But someone just yesterday asked me, what server do I use for to host a podcast? I was like, one of the big three. We use Omni. Then like, oh, okay, cool. What about X, Y, and Z? I'm like, I don't know about them. I use one that helps us with what we need as a company, that helps us with the distribution. But I'm the sharer of the practical stuff. Like if you ask like what recorder would I get, I'll tell you the same answer. The best thing I ever had in my life was the Zoom H4, not the Zoom H4n, the Zoom H4. Best thing ever. Get yourself 2 XLR mics, get yourself an SD card, download Audacity. I'll tell you all those things. I share those things with you. But I mean, like I share the information that I have, at least, so at least you can make a good product for your thing that you want to do. But if you're going to beat me, you have to know those things as well. You have to know those things.
Do you think though you'd be in a good space if there were more people who had potential to beat you? Because it would mean there's growth in the market.
Yeah, there's tons of people who have potential to beat. Every radio station can beat me. Everyone.
But don't you think that shows how backwards the South African market is? That we're talking about radio stations beating out-and-out podcasters.
We were lining up. We were selling the company. We had someone that gave us an offer. Massive media group. They pulled out in the end. I mean, we haven't heard from them, so I don't know if it's a pull out or not.
You'll know in 9 months.
Hey? Yeah. But I mean, like, they were heavily interested in us because they're just like, oh, okay, cool. These guys, we came with numbers. We came with the way we operate. And they don't have that. They've got like a couple of like shitty things on the internet. But I mean, like, they want to stick to their plan. We could have made magic together. I won't lie. If I had a decent budget, the podcast I would make, right? But it will come. It will come. You're going to have to beat me on a ton of things. You really would have to beat me on a ton of things.
So it sounds, I'm trying to almost pinpoint exactly your feelings on it. It feels like not necessarily optimistic on the individual podcaster's growth in South Africa.
Yeah. I think
it's more
you have time and effort into it,
but more also going with the big media house, almost being corporatized on the back end.
Yeah, it
is
helps.
The way to success.
Yeah, it helps. Like if you took this idea, Kieran's podcast, and you went to Prime Media or Jack Rand, they would love it. They love it. They give you a horrible deal though. Horrible deal. You barely see any money in your lifetime.
Doesn't it make you sad though? Like when you look, because when I look at them,
I can't change it. I'm a capitalist.
No, but I mean when you look at the American market, and how the huge deals that are coming out, individuals are being taken over to Spotify with exclusives. Same thing in the UK. Just having that ability to continue to have some level of autonomy or more autonomy as a podcaster, as a creator, that's ultimately the dream. And so the idea of having to almost go and be a corporate monster or corporate entity.
Yeah, well, the podcasting has stemmed from a deep sense of democratization, right?
Yeah.
I think in the South African market, you don't have that much leeway. Things cost. The cost to do this is expensive. And the time spent doing it is also a long period of time, you know? So I don't know, like, it's easier for Netflix to make a podcast because they come with a budget, they pay the people, they get some really good content, and they can access their PR channels, and it can do well. Like, there's not a shadow of doubt in my mind that Netflix podcast is bagging.
Yeah.
Are they going to do a second season? Are they going to do a third season, a fourth season, a fifth season? How long are they going to keep on going for?
That I find is the issue with on the more corporate side. Right?
Yeah.
The one
thing and then they stop doing the thing.
The one thing you can't almost get from a single creator doing it themselves is the relationship they build with their community.
Of course.
And that for me is, having started this podcast, so the single thing I think about the most and how I curate, how I engage, is building a community. Because for me, and someone mentioned this to me, even if you have one listener,
but
you mustn't just because it's a format someone's listening on their phone. Don't forget that's one person ultimately sitting in a room listening. To you.
No, bro, I do not disagree with you on that.
I mean,
that sounds great.
Obviously, I'm new to this. You've had these thoughts for years, and what I'm speaking to is the manifestation.
The only number I'm trying to hit is an engaged audience of 1,000 people. If I get 1,000, I'll eat happy for the rest of my life. I promise you. Those people.
And when you say engaged audience, it means 1,000 people.
They take the content, they share the content.
Who've moved over the paywall.
Yeah. So like one of the things I always chat to the guys at Apple with, I'm just like, yo, expats. Put me there, London and Australia. Put me on the front pages there.
Yeah.
How do I get there? Because some of my market is there, and it's my market that have left the country, so they've got money. You know, they left it suck. They didn't go poor. And they miss home. Give me that stuff. I want that stuff. But I'm going to change Lesson on Somebodies. I will. Once I find the way, it's going to be dope again.
I still think it's great.
Thanks, bro.
The thing I enjoy the most about it and watching comedians, who I have a lot of admiration for, because
comedians are stupid, bro.
I wish I had the courage. It's something I've always loved
to do stand up.
Yes,
comedians are stupid, bro. Don't worry. 95% of comedians are stupid. I don't even stutter when I say that. 95% of South African comedians are stupid, and 98% of them shouldn't grab a microphone.
Well, maybe.
But yet we allow them to. So I like those things. Like that's why, like when people say, like, "Oh, you're a comedian," I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I just want to be known as a creative guy."
And this is something else I wanted to bring up with you, and so maybe I'll mention this now. The thing I find fascinating about you is you are a jack of all trades,
master of none, but a master of one is better than a master of none. Do you know that?
I know that's the end, but I mean, poet, comedian, producer, podcaster. Do you ever sit at night and think, if I just focused on one?
No.
Or would that would not be?
See, the reason why tons of stand-ups think like this, where it's like, "Oh, I'm just dedicating my life to the game. This is the stand-up game." Let me give you a normal night for a stand-up comedian in this country. I'm not saying overseas. Let's say I had a gig tonight, right? Not a corporate gig, a gig. I'm talking about real stand-up comedians. A club show. I'm doing 10 to 15 minutes, 20 minutes max. In a day, there's 24 hours. 8 of those hours I'm sleeping. 20 minutes of those I'm doing this job.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hours in between me and that job, dog. You're telling me I'm just sitting, or let's say I dedicate 3 more hours to writing. There's a lot of hours in between me and that job, dog.
Don't you find it the same with podcasting, though?
No.
If you're just in your case where you're also
No, not at all. You see, with podcasting, I can continue to learn. I can edit. I can do different things in podcasting. I can work a full day of trying to make something dope. That podcast, you'd hear a podcast is worked on well enough.
Yeah. You
will. But as for stand-up, there's just too many hours in a day to do nothing. I hate doing nothing. I'm grateful that I have a lot more free time than most people. I am. But I'm just like, let my time be something where I can work on with something. There's so many skills you can learn. This whole thing in life, it's an old timers thing. Our parents thought this way. Kieran becomes, what did you study, Kieran?
Accounting. I'm a
Accounting.
CA.
You're a CA, right?
Yeah.
That's the only thing you can ever do.
You know, when I did my...
That doesn't sound like a human being. A human being has so many different facets to themselves. I started running now, right?
You're an
like
athlete.
in October. I'm an athlete now,
You're
bro.
an athlete,
I'm a
yeah.
proper athlete, bro. I've dropped 14 kgs. Not only do I run, I also swim. I realize I've loved swimming more than I like running.
So
but
you're a triathlete.
I want to do a triathlon. Like, that's something I desperately want to do.
I've heard triathlons are haram.
No, they're not. I don't think so. But all I know is that I want to do that. Does that, because I'm focusing on that, does that make me not a comedian anymore?
Some would say it would contribute to your art because it gives you another perspective, another
Well, it
angle
gives me
to-
something else, bro.
Yeah.
It gives me something else. The whole point of like being a stand-up especially is that you want to have
Observe.
different experiences so you can relate them and make stories from them. At least that's my view on it.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that I have too many hours in a day to dedicate to one thing. Man, I would hate to die and not have upskilled myself in so many different ways. That's why when the pandemic hit, I didn't get grant funding from the Minister of Arts and Culture. Fuck that guy also. Natim Tetua. If I saw that guy in a spur, I would fucking fight him in front of the kids. Fuck that guy. But I'm just like, I was already doing podcast things. I already had 2 international clients.
Yeah.
So like I had work. There were other guys that didn't have work. And the reason being is that they'd wake up in the morning and go, me, I'm a stand-up. I'm a stand-up only. I only do stand-up things. My 20 minutes at night. Okay. Now, I can't feel sorry for a person like that. You know, I actually predicted that pandemic thing. Like a solid prediction. I one day said at a comedy club, I said, what happens if all of this ends? Everyone's like, what do you mean it's going to end? What if gigs stopped? Like, it'll never stop. I was like, this industry is too fickle. The economic system doesn't make sense. A car salesman who's created nothing in his life makes more money than a stand-up comedian, a decent stand-up comedian. Something's wrong there. So I worked on other things. So I wouldn't say a jack of all trades, a master of none. I'm really, really good at podcasting. I'm also really, really good at stand-up. I can be good at both. You can live in a world with duality like that, you know? So I'm saying, I don't buy the story of like, if you focus on one thing. I focus on my podcast company a lot. I do. But I focus on 10 different podcasts. I'm not going to give up 9 of them because I want to just focus and listen on somebody's. Nah, I think there's money in this thing somewhere.
And you know what? I can't argue with it. If you look at who's the richest man in the world
Currently?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Elon
Musk, yeah.
he's doing about 50,000 different things.
Yeah.
So I agree. And as someone who's also like, I don't have a single thing that I'm dedicated to that I love. The almost I found a cheat code in going the route of this podcast because I'm learning from people about their experiences and what they do, and it in some way fulfills this thing to learn about something different.
Yeah, bro. I'm saying that you're more than just a chartered accountant. Bro, you love Survivor, right? Survivor's your thing, dog. Survivor's your thing, dog. But I'm just like, that is something outside of the world of being a CA. I can tell you right now.
So, I mean, it's also something outside of the world of being an Indian,
Yeah.
which I think I'm even more proud of.
But I'm just like, you would, if someone said, yo, Kieran, someone from Survivor, international, was just like, yo, we actually want you to help work behind the scenes, develop different strategies and different things, or something in the mix, you jump at that job, right?
Yeah, of course.
You know? So I'm saying that's more than a CA.
Because, I mean, this is where I'm at currently in my life, right? 30 years old, moving to the UK.
Yeah.
A factor of apartheid, and now I don't know how we've ended up here, but I knew this was going to happen with you being in front of me.
I just wanted to talk about podcasts.
But the one thing is our parents, where they...
My parents are white, dog. What are you going to do now?
No, but I'm saying that a lot of our parents didn't have opportunities, so they sent you to university.
Yes, and they live vicariously through you. Yeah, it's a brown parents thing.
And getting a corporate job is the aspirational thing.
And understand their thought process behind that.
And it makes complete sense.
Complete sense, right?
But as the child,
you're
at
like,
some
why?
point, you're like, my main thing was stability.
Yes.
You reach a point where I'm stable. Can I retire tomorrow? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder.
Yeah.
And
other things I could have done.
I was telling my fiance.
Okay, we get it. You got a fiance, dog. Jeez. I get it, bro. I get it. I'm single. I get it, dog.
Do you know what the worst thing about this is? I've had a fiance for 3 years. So she should
What's
be
wrong
white
with
by
you,
now.
dog?
COVID.
What's wrong with you?
COVID.
I don't blame COVID, dog.
No, seriously, COVID. But the thing is, you get into a bit of a funk. You're like, well, is this it? Like, what's more? What's next?
It's worse than an artist, bro.
It's
worse for an artist. I can tell you right now.
Without a doubt. But for me, the beauty of having that realization then was, I'm so scared of taking risks that involve financial risks, because what happens next? Yeah. But I've always had a creative side of me that I've wanted to come out, and to finally get to do something like this. There's no amount of hours in the day, exactly as you're saying with the podcast, that I find are enough to do it. Even if it's something as small as creating a thumbnail. There's a creation of an art. There's an enjoyment.
Your thumbnail sucks ass, by the way.
I think they're quite nice. I think you
should listen to somebody that's got experience. I think
you don't like my YouTube thumbnails?
Nah.
I was quite stoked with the one that I've created.
I mean, I haven't watched the YouTube stuff. I'm talking about the podcast itself on like Spotify and Apple.
Yeah, look, that can change. It looks like I'm about to go and break out into a sermon.
Give us some money. We'll give you a top. Our stuff is valued between $18,000 and $25,000 US.
I was about to say, you've already told me the story. Now I'm expecting a massive discount.
I'm going to give it to you for 3,000 rand. That's what Andrew's going to want minimum, boss.
Did I tell you? I just gave you a whole story of how I'm unemployed for the first time in my life.
Yeah, but I'm looking around over here. Your fro is clearly grasping. Things are looking up for you, bro. Your inverter kicked in now. You don't even have a generator, dog. So you got your own recording studio. You're doing very well for yourself, dog. In the recording studio is in your house also. You don't have to leave. You got a dog that knows how to open doors. You're doing very well for yourself, dog.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, but that is something I've identified. It literally looks like I'm about to break out into a sermon. So that one needs to change. But anyway, the whole point of that story was it is very fulfilling to try something creative.
Of course.
It is very daunting on the other side of being creative, is that the financial uncertainty.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Is very tough. Mm-hmm. So I can understand it, like what you're saying about the model in South Africa is broken.
Also find, all the people I've ever dated, right, have always known how I earn money. And as a freelancer, you earn money in big bits and small bits. Sometimes there's months where there aren't any bits. But you need to have people around you who are sentient enough to understand that. Because also as a creator from the outside, they wonder about you. My mom and dad wonder about me. They go, what's Simmi doing today? Why is he in Cape Town for 3 months? How is he eating? How will he eat in the future once we're dead? That's the only thing my parents worry about. My dad told me years and years ago, it's like, I don't care what you do. I only want to know that once I die, you'll be okay. And that's the reason why they always drum home. You got to go become a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant. Because once they die, they want you to be okay. Now, I've managed to, at least with my parents, shift the goalposts from being okay to being happy.
Yeah.
I was like, for me, a lot of people ask me, why don't you get married? I was like, well, firstly, maybe I don't believe in marriage. When are we expecting kids? Maybe I don't want kids. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, these are the things maybe those are the things that make me happy. So I'm like, maybe being happy for me is I wake up for a run in the morning, have a cup of coffee, and I can see what the day has unfold. That's why I love Cape Town. I know a lot of people love Cape Town as a holiday destination. No, I love it as a vibe, bro. I stay in the city. I can do 5 kilometers in the morning of a run. I walk 6 kilometers. I can go swim. I can meet a lot of people and do business there. At any moment, there's money somewhere in Cape Town. That's the type of system I thrive in.
Yeah, I saw you just stalking David Kramer.
Bro, I can't believe people don't know who David Kramer is. Actually, now you remind me, that absolutely upset me. People in the restaurant are like, who is that man? I was like, you don't know Folksy. My guy, you must leave this thing. This is not for you, this world. Yeah, but so like those are the type of things. So when I'm happy, I create better. When I'm worried, I don't.
Yeah.
So that's why Lesson on Somebody's has to change. I have to get back into being happy.
And what are you thinking of doing with Lesson on Somebody's? Question 1. Question 2. Is it daunting changing something that has clearly been so successful?
No, it's not. See, the thing is, I must enjoy it, right? If I enjoy it, everything else will fall into place. Have I thought what I'm going to do with Lesson on Somebody's? Bro, to be honest, I told you before we started, I'm going back to basics. I've got myself an old Zoom recorder. I've got myself 2 XLR mics. I'm going to record me. Whatever thoughts I have. I was just scared of doing these like monologue type of podcasts.
I think you'd be excellent at it.
I'm slowly getting there. I'm slowly getting to that realization, like maybe I'll be good at it. Maybe you'll develop it into something more. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know the angle, how I'll do it, whether it'll be under Lesson on Somebody's, maybe it'll be something else. But I feel that I know my power in telling a story. I know that power. That story is good. There's actually a podcast that I love. It's a poet called George, and his podcast is actually called, have you heard George's podcast? That's what it's called. It's absolutely fascinating. And the sound he creates and the stories are really good. So I'm not saying on that level of execution, but if I can sit in front of a mic and feel comfortable enough to talk like how I talk to people, if I just remove the Kieran and I speak, I think I've got a winning model. I think I have a winning model, but now I have to try it to prove if it is a winning model or not. And that's creativity. You see, as a creative, I have 1,000 ideas in a day. 999 and sometimes 1,000 of them are really, really bad. Right?
You'll need one, yeah.
A lot of people don't think like that. They go like, oh, I must have an amazing idea and then that will take off. I fail a lot more times than others. I'm also comfortable in failure. I'm comfortable in rejection. In fact, a girl asked me the other day, she said, it was years ago, by the way, just in case like, any girl I know that's listeners going, tell me more. Another girl? That's very interesting. You mentioned someone else. It's happened before, when I've done a podcast and I've been like, yo, I was with this girl the other night, and then the girl that I'm with sends me this going, you were with a girl another night? Interesting. Very, very interesting.
Do tell. Yeah.
So they asked, what if I didn't kiss you back? I said, She said, what if I didn't kiss you back? I said, oh, like reject me. She said, yeah. I was like, I have died on stage so many times in my life that rejection is a close friend of mine.
Yeah.
When things don't work, I don't panic. I don't panic. It's not my thing. I accept the consequence. I can deal with the consequence, but panic, never. Even when I swim, I didn't realize how good I was at swimming until I met other swimmers. When I did Clifton 4th to Clifton 1st, it's like a 2.3 kilometer swim, right? And the lifeguard came to me afterwards and said, we watched you from 4th all the way to 1st. The guy walked along the rocks. I was like, why would you do that? He says, because you're swimming by yourself. I said, yeah. It's like, and we'd never seen you before. You weren't like with all the other swimmers and stuff. I said, yeah. And he said, well, did you get panicked because the water's cold? I was like, I don't panic. One of my friends, Rashad Yusuf Dadu, triathlete, TM, he always panics in the water. He panics. It's not a comfortable place for him. I don't panic. So in any stressful situation, I don't panic. And that's one of the things you learn as a creative. If you're a good creative, you don't panic. You don't panic. So I don't panic thinking about, is this new iteration of Lesson on Somebody's going to work? Is it not going to work? If it doesn't work, it's okay. I don't panic. I don't get flustered.
And where does it come from? Does it come from doing stand-up?
From rejection.
From rejection.
You see, the thing is, and maybe it comes from other pieces as well, but I firmly believe failing and rejection is a fundamental part of being a creative. You fail a lot more, but once you get something right, you can run with it. I got Lesson on Somebody's right. I ran with it. Maybe now I'm running out of gas with it. It needs a reinvention. There's no rules to this podcast thing. So I'm saying all the times I've been rejected. I've died on stage. Bro, I opened for Wayne Brady in Dubai, dog. I got booed. 5,000 people. Boo. Did a gag they didn't like. Boo. I was killing in Dubai other than that. I didn't make it affect me. They went boo. I said, you guys have been great. My name is Riyad Musa. Riyad Musa on social medias. RIAADMOOSA. Riyad Musa. Follow me there. And I bounced. Wayne Brady also died. So I was like, it was a tough gig for everyone that night. It didn't affect me. Dying in front of 8 people didn't affect me. So when she asked if I rejected you, I said I would have kept it moving. I would have been like, okay, cool. You don't want to kiss me. It's fine.
But where did the thick skin develop?
That's also another theory I have. I don't believe an artist really has a thick skin. It's about having an outwardly thick skin to you, to the outside world. I have a thick skin there. But when I go home at night, or if whichever person I'm with, they will hear me complain. One of the people that was in my life, a very close girlfriend that I had, one of the things that she was really, really good at was managing to accept my complaining. But she would also manage to call me out on that complaining as well. She would be like, okay, you've complained enough about it. Stop. No, I want to be like, okay, I'm going to listen. But what else can you do? Like, you need those things as creative people. Because when I close the room door and listen on somebody's doesn't work, hey man, please, person that's listening to me, help me. Help me at least feel a bit better that this thing is not working. That's the only thing. But outwardly, I'll be like, nah, listen on somebody's the fucking best podcast in the fucking country. That's Africa's third best podcast over there. Always on the charts. You know what people say sometimes when they see my face on those Apple things? Whose dick is Simmi sucking to get those things? That's not Simmi sucking dick, bro. That's hard work. Right? But I go back going, the audacity to say that I sucketh the dicketh to get onto the Apple podcast features. Why would that person say so? Like, I will think, like, I don't think like I'm a Shakespearean poet, but I mean, like, I'll think why someone will say that. Like, it's different. Like, Kieran, you'd be like, yo, I've seen the work that you've done, how you share stuff. I'd be like, if someone said that, why didn't you just come to me? Yeah. I can also help you. Oh, I want people to win. So yeah, but it sucks being a creative.
No, it's tough.
A salary would be nice. It would.
And that's the great dichotomy, right? It's people with a salary want to have the freedom, and people with the freedom who can create things think and...
You got medical aid, dog? I wish every artist in this world pays their medical aid before they pay their rent.
100%.
That's the only thing that keeps me up at night.
That is, and it's the reason why I went into chartered account. Like, there's a news article from when I matriculated. Yeah. And it said, Kieran is going to UCT and he's going to take...
They wrote a news article because you were going to UCT as an Indian kid.
No, I got 8 days, so...
Oh yeah, you were one of those sharp lighties. I was in matric and you were grade 8.
Yeah.
Hey, you became a sharp lighty, bro.
So, but it was literally, the article said, Kieran is going to take on the dual challenge of becoming a chartered accountant and furthering his drama career.
Nice. Did you further your drama career?
I did not. Oh. Right, and you can see the manifestation now later on in life where there's this other part of me.
Go back and do it.
Well, it's the beauty of drama, of any sort of creative process is you don't have to go back and learn. Like
but you can go do it still.
And that's what I'm almost trying to do now, right?
Yeah, I want to. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't have studied law. I would have studied history and economics.
You know what? That's why when you say something like, I want to do a podcast where it's more monologue, if you had to sit and take a topic and talk about it and add your own spin, I think people would listen. Yeah,
but I don't think I'm clever enough.
I think as someone who knows you from high school, I remember seeing an academic scroll in your blazer, so I definitely think you're smart enough.
The game is game, dog. Game is game. Life has changed, though, son. Hey, Kieran, thanks for joining me on my podcast. Do you have any questions for me? That's my favorite line I like saying on Listen on Somebody's. It's come to my favorite part of the podcast.
Do you ever feel like an imposter as a creative?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, like, people, what they call that imposter syndrome, eh?
Yeah.
No. So I started. Okay, I hate saying this because it sounds like I'm a hipster of the therapy world. I started therapy much earlier than other people.
Before it was cool.
Before it was cool, before it was the end thing. So my emotions have always been in check and stuff, and my thought processes. And I realized from a younger age that for me, my critical self has always been my biggest obstacle. So, for example, I sold my show to Showmax, one of my stand-up shows. It cost me 9,000 rand, right? I sold it for like 240. It was on television. It aired. That's something you should be proud of, right?
Absolutely.
Kept it moving. Didn't take time to celebrate it. I got this African Union fellowship. They're flying me to Germany for 2 weeks. Kept it moving. Didn't think about it. So my critical self is my biggest competitor. It's my biggest obstacle because I don't take a step back and go, well done, boy. That is nice. Let's go eat something nice.
And so that statement like leads me to the question of like, do you have an ultimate purpose? Because it sounds like you're moving towards something. If you're not sitting back and reflecting,
I don't think I have an ultimate purpose. I think at the end of the day, all I want to do is have enough money to pay my bond, to pay my medical aid. Yeah. If that's a purpose, to be a good person, it takes nothing. It costs nothing to be kind. A lot of people go like, "Oh, Simmi's an asshole." I am. Don't get me wrong. I am an asshole. I love to tease people.
I can imagine you have moments.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have it all the time. I know I'm boisterous. I know I'm loud. Struggle to find anybody that knows me to say Simmi isn't kind. You will struggle to find that. So I think if there's an ultimate purpose for me is to continue being this nice person. That's it, and make sure medical aid and bond is paid.
And I can see how all of that does manifest in what you're doing. Then, in the creative side, you get to pay off your bond and have a medical aid.
Yeah, I mean,
and
like
kindness?
there's something that I'm really proud of recently, right? Is the Few God. I did a show at the Few God recently. They asked me before I did it with Yasin Barnes, who's another comedian, but the Few God had asked me, would I like to do the show at the reopening of the theater because it had closed down during COVID? And I said yes. That's an incredible, cool thing to celebrate.
Absolutely.
But you know what also made it really, really cool is that the guy that owns the theater also owns all these bunch of co-work and co-living spaces, right? And I was like, yo, man, I really want to be in Cape Town for a long period of time. How can you give me a deal on like the rent and stuff? And he's like, no, I don't want to give you a deal. I said, okay, cool. He's like, how long do you want to stay for? I said, anywhere between 3 and 6 months. He says, tell me the day you want to come. Tell me the day you want to leave. And I was like, why? He says, man, it's just good to have someone like you around. I was like, but aren't you losing business? He says, on a 12,000 Rand a month, 42 square meter loft. I'm not losing anything, doc. He's like, I'm gaining someone that helped us with the theater. I'm gaining someone that I dig their podcast. Gaining someone that always ships people into our co-working space. He says, tell me the date you want to come. I didn't get that deal from having a great podcast. I don't get that deal from being a great comedian. Got that deal from being a good person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it sounds like you've fast forwarded quite a few steps, because a lot of people who chase success, ultimately end up looking at
a win for one is a win for all, my friend.
But that's it. That's exactly it. You end up realizing that the most important thing you can cultivate in life is not your finances; it's the relationships around you.
That's very true. Yeah. R&B, solutions thinking. You've basically done a lesson on somebody's episode of lesson on somebody's. That's basically what you've done. Can you give me this audio? I want to put it on my podcast.
I'll give it to you.
I'll punch your podcast at the same time.
Yeah, that's fine.
Lesson on somebody. But you have to say, it's time to find out the lesson on somebody of the lesson on somebody. You have to do that. If you don't say that line, I'm not going to post it.
No, I'll happily send you the
audio. That's dope.
I have a few more questions.
Dala.
Okay.
You like long podcasts, bro. Yeah. It's very brave of you. Very, very brave.
But you know what? It's also, to your point, it's also a case of you have to do something that you enjoy.
Yeah. Exactly.
I cannot sit here 30 minutes rapid fire with Simmi and say, thank you, it's
you're
transactional,
100% right.
You're out. I love the meandering.
I've respected you from the moment you wore Essex. So you are an athlete.
Even me, I'm an athlete.
Yeah, you probably run like at 5:10 a kilometer. I can see it in you.
When I'm fit.
So jealous of you, bro.
No, bro, I'm bad at running. I still owe you a run. I still actually owe you a run.
You'll never beat me, dog.
I don't want to. That's the truth.
In Cape Town, they call me the Cape Doctor because I'm fast like the wind. They don't even call me. You know when I was swimming in the ocean there.
Yeah.
Lifeguard came out. He said, "Yo, will you give us tips?" I said later on, as I was giving the starting the tutorial, I was like, one guy said, "Yo, I just want to let you know, we no longer call them great white sharks. We call them white sharks." It's like, why? This guy's like, when you're in the water, we reserve greatness for you. I was like, thank you, sir. I've got a school where I teach swimming. Virgin Active Lane 3. You know what the school is called?
What?
School of Fish. I'm there. And it's for Jewish people as well. Shula fish. I make sure they
You were asking when's the podcast coming to an end right now. No, so the thing I've loved about our chat is you've seen a lot of success. Your podcast is doing exceptionally well, and you still talk down on it. You say you're very open about your unhappiness with it and how you want to change.
Yeah.
Before we get to some more about the future and where you think podcasting is going in South Africa, you've mentioned a few things that you're proud of, but I always like asking you, what are some of the things when you look back on Lesser Known Somebodies, on POC podcast, what are you proud of?
It's
What
going to
comes to
sound
mind?
so stupid, but without that podcast, I would not have made one of my closest friends. Like, leave Dean. Dean is my closest friend. Dean is my best friend. I joke when I say Dean is my husband, but literally Dean is like my brother. But without Lesson on Somebodies, I wouldn't have gone to Dubai. And in Dubai, I wouldn't have met the wonderful people there that think I'm the best podcaster, that have given me jobs because they think I'm brilliant, that they've given me the trust to make their podcast good, that they've invited me into their homes to have dinners, to celebrate with them, to go out and watch football together. This podcast, that is the best thing about Lesson on Somebodies, is that I've made someone and they're not guests. I mean, one was a guest, Abdullah Abs. Abs, a comedian from Dubai. Abs is like my brother. Like, there's like a legitimacy about our friendship. That if I didn't do that podcast, I never would have started this company. I would never have POC podcast would never have gotten its way to Dubai. POC podcast would never have met all the people in that podcasting fraternity and community, from people from Apple and Spotify and Deezer, and these people are my friends. Like, I'll die for these people. So I'm very grateful for the podcast for doing that. I don't know if that's an achievement, but for me, it's an achievement because for me, having friends is a really dope thing to have.
I think it shows where your priorities lie and the perspective you have on life. And I think it's admirable because it's something that I continuously have to remind myself that is more important than other stuff. Because Joburg, rat race, coming from not much, the constant thing is I need money to feel secure.
Yeah.
And irrespective of how much money you have, you never feel secure. There's always more to get. And so to almost be able to have that ability to see beyond and understand that this is what you've said. If my mortgage is paid, if I have medical aid, I'm good.
Yeah,
and
I'll sort food out later.
You know,
that's what it is.
It's your priorities are correct. Your Maslow's hierarchy is not is not out of whack, right? What do you hope is in the future for POC podcasts and Listen on Somebodies?
It sounds stupid, bro, but money, eh? It's the way that we're currently structured is that I know that it's like building an Instagram account. So we're building a following. If the more people that see the content we make, leave Lesson on Somebodies, there's tons of great podcasts, POC podcasts make. Bioscope Brasa, Omikachelfeer, Ilugulugu, Open Wide Say Bake the Podcast, Son of a Son, Short Fine Legs. We've got incredible, interesting podcasts. Support it. So it's building. I hope more and more people come and support us. That's about it. Yeah. What I hope for myself is to tell more stories. I dig telling stories.
And is it going to be other people's stories? Or is it going to be stories of your own doing?
Like if Lesson on Somebody doesn't continue, I will do something. I'll call it like fucking Simmi Areff. He tells a good story.
Two more questions, and I'm going deeply personal and to the end. So, how has the relationship with Apple changed your perspective? Changed how you view podcasting?
I fight with them a lot. I mean, firstly, I approached every single platform our podcast is on. And Apple are the only people that ever respond to us, and they listen to creators. And why I dig them, why I fucks with them, is because, for example, they made it easy for us to get money, right? With a paywall thing. I dig it. It means that they're thinking from a creator's perspective. Of course, they take their commission from it, but I mean, Spotify do the same thing as soon as they open their one up to Africa, which they haven't. You see, so they don't. So automatically you go, well, Spotify doesn't really care about me. You know, Apple are just like, yo, what will make it easier? And I go like, well, it's I would like to upload our stuff in MP3 instead of WAV or FLAC. And be like, okay, cool. They listen and they'll go and change, and I dig that. I dig. It makes it easier for me as the creator and administrator of this thing. It makes it easier. And if you make it easier, I can fucks with you because it means there's somebody that is listening to me. Because you're also trying to make the ecosystem better, right? That's inherently what you want. So you want to make it as easy as it is for you, and it's a mutual benefit.
The SPU.
Yeah.
So podcasting universe.
Yeah, and I dig Apple probably because most of my stuff is Apple. I do recognize the problem that a lot of people don't have Apple Podcasts, so they don't see the things that I see or be part of the algorithm that I'm part of. But I look at that as going, well, I've lost you. Until there's something, somewhere that manages for us to get closer together, I've lost you. I'm okay with that. Spotify doesn't do the same for us. Apple, if you go to your phone now, you'll see on that featured section, me, Bicycle Browser, Son of a Son, Tekla, all these great local podcasts, right? Go to Spotify.
No, it doesn't have that.
Why? Are Africans not good enough for this podcast game? Is it only Joe Rogan? Is it only Reply All? Are we not good enough? You go find an interview show and compare it to Listen on Somebody's. Someone that's of the same caliber of me, right? In any of those markets, and you tell me Listen on Somebody doesn't come close to what they have, if not better. You go find a movie podcast and you go listen to Bicycle Brasa afterwards. They can review the same movie. You can't tell me Bicycle Brasa aren't as good. Spotify don't recognize us. Apple do. So that's why I fucks with Apple.
I mean, that's what you described is pretty much the African conundrum, right?
Yeah.
We're just as good, but not being picked up.
Where's our flowers?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I ask everyone this, and I
don't want to question.
No, but you've
did you ask David Higgs this?
I did ask David Higgs this. You've answered it in some way. So, are you proud of yourself?
The answer is yes.
Why? I think you've covered.
Yeah, I've covered that. Yeah.
If you were somehow miraculously put in front of 6-year-old Simmi, right, and
That's exactly what my therapist does, by the way.
And you had to, what would you tell 6-year-old Simmi to look forward to the most in your journey up until where you are today?
To look forward to the most.
It doesn't have to be an accolade. It could be a learning. It could be, I
don't think I would tell him anything like that. Sorry, this is exactly what I do in therapy. It like literally goes, my therapist will be like, and Simmi, what would you tell small Simmi about where you are today?
Do you know what? It's actually
and I'll be like,
hilarious.
I'll tell small Simmi, yo, my man, if you sort out your problems earlier on, you wouldn't have to be here. That's what I would first tell him. I don't know, hey, bro. I mean, I could give him a bit of advice, but I don't know what I would say. Like, yo, you're gonna really. Oh, I mean, you're really gonna enjoy women. Like, I'll tell him that. I'll be like, yo, you are gonna have a propensity for spending time with women, with different women, and other women are gonna be upset that you spend time with other women, but you are not committed to anyone other than yourself. So it's okay to be selfish. I'll say, look forward to being selfish. And I look forward to be like, I don't know, walking on the promenade and holding hands sounds like a dope thing, right? Going to play arcade games with the girls sounds like a dope thing, right? I'd say go look forward to those things. Those are great moments for me. I would say that. I mean, like, there's no accolade. I want to say like, oh boy, when you get on the front page of Apple, dog. Or like, oh, when you win the South African Comedy Award, dog, you're going to have a good time. I want to say that. I'll be like, yo. Oh, I guess meeting, you're going to have I'll tell Small Sim, you're going to have such a fun time with best friend Dean. You legitimately going to have a great time with him. That guy is going to be your best friend for life. You're going to have so many answers and fights and arguments and disagreements and agreements and hugging and mollycoddling and looking after moments. You're going to have such a great friendship with that guy.
And holding hands on the promenade.
I mean, I wouldn't hold hands on the promenade with Dean, but I mean, like, if there's a person in this world where I promise you, I remember just recently we were out and I said, Dean, this girl wants to see me. And he said, but you promised that tonight would be me and you. And I said, you know what? You are right. It is me and you. I was like, I can go into my friend's wallet. I can go into his house. I mean, like, I'll tell small Simmi that's actually probably one of your greatest achievements is a friendship like that.
I mean, as we reflected on time and time again in this chat, it's the relationships really do matter the most.
It is, yeah. Relationships are incredibly important.
No, I think that's a great answer.
Yeah.
You've
I know. What did David Higgs say?
This
is when you must throw forward to the podcast. You say, well, if you haven't listened, you should go listen to the David Higgs podcast. That's what you should do.
That's a great question. If you haven't listened,
go
have a listen. There'll be a link to.
There. That's my boy. That's my boy.
And last question now.
Mm-hmm.
So, having been on the Self Starters podcast, a place where
is that what it's called?
It's called the Self Starters. I'm glad at the end of our hour and a half chat you've found that out. I was
thinking about it the whole time though. To be honest, in the back of my head, I was like, oh fuck, what's Kieran's podcast
it's
name?
on the whiteboard there.
Oh shit! What is it? What is it? I remember it was. I was like, it's self-image something. Self-imaginations.
It's the triathletes.
Yes, triathletes. Good name for podcast, bro.
Having been on the Self Starters podcast, right?
Okay. My life has changed in no way for the positive.
No. But the premise is how people turn their ideas into successful action. You've done that.
Debatable.
But if you were at the start of your journey, or even now where you are today, whose self-starter journey do you think would add value to listeners?
Like what I've learned?
So who out there that you've looked to in their story and for what they've done, how they've turned an idea into action?
For POC Podcasts, you go no further than there's a podcast that's already created. It's called Startup.
Okay.
It's for the guys from Gimlet. When that guy carries like a Zoom recorder with him and he goes to all these like venture capitalists and he gets interviewed and like you can hear him like be shut down and stuff. Yeah. It's horrible. And his wife telling him like, yo man, what work are you doing today? And like she's supporting the household. That's exactly how POC Podcasts was as a startup as itself. For me as Simmi, there's one comedian in this world that changed my life and the way I think about comedy and how I do it. It's a guy called Daniel Kitson. Kitson is as underground as they come. I actually think he's a better storyteller than Chappelle, and that's a lot to say.
Didn't you have him on your podcast?
No, Daniel Kitson I've never had on my podcast. Daniel Kitson is, man, I got to see him live. And you should never meet your idols, but I had such a good time, like just the way he does things. And I say Kitson showed me as a comedian that you can do things differently and still have fans. People can still love you. So a lot of people these days will be like, oh, I haven't seen Simmi on stage, and the people that have will be like, Simmi is telling stories these days. There's stories that I'll tell, like long stories. And so Kitson definitely played a role in my life like that, I guess. Does that answer the question? I don't know if that's a suitable answer.
It is. It is a suitable answer.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Simmi, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
No, thank you, Kieran.
You really are the definition of a self-starter. I think personally I've learned a lot as I build out my own podcast. It's, I think, fascinating tips and insight into the podcasting landscape. Some a bit more bleak than I would have hoped to hear, but hopefully with powerhouses like you, that will change over time.
You'll be fine, though. Like, legitimately, you're going to be okay. Like, you'll see your podcast once you hit, like, 30, 40, 50 episodes. You'll be flying.
Thanks, my brother.